Ted Carter hasn't canoed on the Cuyahoga River since 1978, but you'd never know it to watch him. On a late weekday afternoon on the river, Carter pulls his oar through the water with the steady rhythm of someone who's done this a million times before. And maybe in his head he has, because he says a boat trip just like this, more than 40 years ago, is what inspired his whole direction in life.
1978, year of changes. That was the year my school, Mount Pleasant Catholic, took us on several field trips, and one being a trip down the Cuyahoga River.
He's here today to relive that trip. The memories are still vivid.
From getting here, it was probably only about 45 minutes from the school, but it seemed like we were so far, because it just looked so different, coming from 131st and Union. I've always heard the negative side of the Cuyahoga River, and I wasn't looking forward to the field trip, mind you, because I thought it was going to be like something nasty or dirty, but we got a chance to see deer, we got a chance to see nature at its best. And coming from the inner city and not being exposed to things like that, it was just a mind-blowing experience.
That day in the boat, he says he realized something. If he didn't know how amazing nature was, a lot of other kids probably didn't either. He wanted to help them find out.
And I told my parents that day at the dinner table that was it for me. I am going to be a science teacher.
But where the river trip opened up possibilities, something else happened that year that made his world feel a lot smaller. It was a few months after the river trip, when his parents bought him a new bike for finishing 8th grade.
It was a Huffy 5-speed. I still remember with the bouncing seat and blue, powder blue.
He and his friends had always loved cycling into the suburb of Shaker Heights, a few blocks away from where they lived in Cleveland. They'd joke with each other about the mansions they'd live in when they grew up. But not long after he got his new Huffy, Carter woke up one morning, set off to explore, and didn't get any farther than the end of his block.
The barriers were posted right there at Scottsdale. The barriers were made up of rock. They weren't attractive. They were very ugly looking eyesores.
Permanent traffic barricades running across the entire width of his street and a few others nearby, right at the border between Cleveland and Shaker Heights.
So it pretty much prohibited anything in the street from going forward.
The city of Shaker Heights, which built the barricades, said they were to slow down traffic. But Carter says he and his friends saw something more.
Don't go through Shaker. I still look at it as a scar. I looked at it as the have and have-nots, myself being the have-not.
That summer, he stopped dreaming about living in one of those big mansions. But what he didn't stop dreaming about was becoming a teacher.
I'm about to start the lesson shortly, so if you haven't finished, don't worry about it, but I'm going to go ahead and start.
Today, Ted Carter is in his 34th year in the Cleveland Public Schools. He's now at Wade Park School in Huff, and he does teach science like he said he would. And one thing he does every year, at least once, is tell his stories about the barricades and the canoe.
They're both standouts. Shaker Heights episode with the barriers, it introduced me early as an African-American male, what my limitations are. So I learned that in the 8th grade, and also that year I learned that God has blessed us with a beautiful planet. Did you find out any enlightening moments?
A planet where they'll find both barriers and rivers.